Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome a fellow at the New America Foundation and publisher at EnergyTrap.org, Lisa Margonelli.
Good afternoon. For most of this morning, we've been talking about kind of big stratospheric issues of resilience. And I'm here to talk about what I've been doing for the past year and a half, which is I've been interviewing middle-class families about how much they spend on gasoline and transportation. It's a very kind of granular, low-to-the-ground kind of stuff. And I think it's important because when we talk about resilience, because gasoline is a substance that we view largely in sort of macroeconomic terms. We view it as, obviously, as a greenhouse gas causer. It is a big part of our environmental vulnerability. And it also, obviously, has health impacts. There's gasoline impacts a large spectrum of vulnerabilities. But the one that I want to talk about is the economic. Today, the price of gas across the country is $3.89 a gallon. That means that we're spending $1.4 billion on gasoline alone today. Not diesel, not heating oil, nothing else, only gasoline. That's an enormous amount of money. It'll be about $500 billion by the end of the year. That's huge. It's really, it is actually impacting the recovery. The difference between this year's gas prices and 2010 is about $100 billion in aggregate. That means that it's absorbing the whole middle-class tax break, basically. This is a huge thing. And it gets even bigger when you get down to the household level, because at the household level, for households making $50,000 a year, gasoline takes up more of their money than health care or taxes, which are the two big Republican and Democratic ideas for how to help the middle class. Gasoline and transportation are an enormous hit on a family. The Commerce Department estimates that the average family at $50,000 spends about $8,000 on their car and on gasoline a year. We found in a study of 2,000 people that we did at the Energy Trap that actually, for many families at that income level, it's much higher. For some, it's much, much higher. And I'm going to show a video now of a guy named Darren, who I met in Fairfield, California. He's coming up in a second. He's a security guard in 2000.
Darren Flinoy. I do security work, and I work 7 days a week. My commute time is 560 miles. I spend about $500 a month on gas. My car payment, I spend $515 a month. Car insurance, I spend $80 a month. Car tolls, I spend $180 a month. Total expenses, $1,275 a month.
That's a little over half of his income. And whenever I see this thing, I get chills because I am just, literally sort of scared for him. What happens if he gets a cold and he can't do his 2 part-time jobs 7 days a week, which is why his commute is so long? He is, quintessentially trapped. He told me if gas goes up to $5 a gallon, he absolutely can't do anything about it. He just has to pay. How is he paying? Well, he cuts back on food. He cuts back on medicine. He doesn't have any kids, but what we know statistically is that people cut back on taking their kids to exercise or after-school programs. All of these things are things that have increased the risk for the family, increased the risk for the whole system further down the line. So Darren has to pay that money. He has absolutely no choice. He sees himself as being just, there's nothing. He has to put the money into his gas tank, or he will not be able to keep making ends meet. Now, there's a tendency to think when you look at this, okay, so one guy made some stupid choices, and here he is. But this is actually a system in the United States. The reason that Darren has to pay so much to get to work is that he got a mortgage in 2005 because he was able to drive till he qualified, which is a classic thing. Rockefeller, as the transportation section, has actually done a lot of work on this. He drove till he qualified. He got a mortgage way away from the jobs. And then he has to commute back in. He lost his job in 2008. He was laid off with the downturn, and he was given 2 part-time jobs. And so now he's locked into this very long commute. Now, what we also know statistically is that people are more likely to keep paying their car payments than their mortgage payments when things get tough like this, because the car is the essential thing for staying afloat. And one of the things that we've done in the United States is we have really designed a system for driving. We've designed a system of transportation where it's more important to have a car that runs than to have a GED. So we're more auto-based than we are knowledge-based. And so one of the things that we really have to do to change this, obviously, is to change the funding for transportation, change the incentives, change this whole transit system. Rockefeller's done a lot of work on that. We have a system that's essentially resilient in the wrong way. It's very resistant to change. The incentives in current transportation funding fund more gasoline dependence. We have a hard time funding working public transportation, and we tend to subsidize non-working public transportation with the stuff that works. So it's a complicated system. The good thing is that in the current transportation bill that's up, actually in the Senate, has some good parts in it. It has some targets for reducing gasoline consumption. It has some incentives for better performance. But I think we also need to throw a lot more creativity at it. We need to encourage entrepreneurs to get into this space. We need to encourage employers to start picking up some of the slack in terms of getting people to work. We need to give them incentives to do this. And then I just want to tell you a quick story about a woman named Tammy Trahan, who I talked to, who lives in New Hampshire. Tammy was a single mom, and she had 2 kids. She had a job that was quite far from her house, and she couldn't move because the kids were in school. Her car broke down, and she got another car from a buy here, pay here car lot, which is well, the interest is about 30%. It's terrible. Once she got that car, she had a $300 car payment. She had about $300 average monthly expenses for repairs for the car because it was old and it was an SUV. And then she paid about $500 a month in gasoline costs. This was terrible. For one thing, Tammy stopped buying her asthma medicine. She had to go to the ER. It was this classic sort of cascade of increasing vulnerability. But this is actually a relatively easy problem to solve. And a New Hampshire nonprofit called More Than Wheels came in, and they gave her a car loan at 5% for a Toyota Yaris that got fantastic gas mileage. And she was able to reduce expenses dramatically. In fact, she saved $7,000 in the first year. That's huge. The average for More Than Wheels is actually people save $3,500. But she was not only able to save, she was able to save and stop working 4 jobs. She was able to spend more time with her kids. She was able to tell her kids reliably that she would pick them up after school, which had been really a problem, and a sort of an existential problem as a mother to not be able to promise that you were going to actually be there for the kids with the car. So she's able to pick them up. And you know, she was suddenly able to control her own life. That's not that hard to give people car loans for 5%. That's not hard. I mean, a lot of people in this room could probably figure out how to do this. And we need to sort of throw the big picture on the one hand, the big funding for transportation, all of these big pictures together, with also the small picture of the difference that it makes to an individual family to have a car that works. And I think, to wrap up, you know, we're talking here about resilience, and you tend to get focused on responding to crises. I think there needs to also be dreams. You need to actually have a vision for where you're going. And I think one of these visions should be that nobody should really be stuck pouring their salary into their gas tank. It's not good for the environment. It's not good for the family. For social cohesion. It's not good for the local economy. This is the sort of thing where we need to actually have a vision that we move towards as a whole, because it's just quite sad when you see Darren's situation. We could do something about that. Thank you.